Greetings. Welcome to Journey of Enlightenment. I am your host, Dr. Roger Guppo. Today I am bringing you our session from the lovely country of Singapore. Today's session would be a bit different from what we have been discussing over the past few months. Over the last weeks in particular, I have had many requests, many questions from our viewership on different topics, different ideas. So therefore, I would like to address some of those issues in today's session. So one of the questions that a viewer sent in was, is Hinduism a religion? So let us address this question first. Hinduism is never and was never and will never be a religion. In fact, the very word Hindu is a modern concept. What we call Hinduism is actually known as Sanatan Dharma, which means, loosely translated, the eternal treatise or the eternal truth. What does it mean to be eternal? The concept of Sanatan Dharma is a truth of our own existence, a truth of ourselves. In other words, when we remove that which is not and that which remains, that is truth. Now that sounds a bit philosophical, so let's break this down in simpler terms. According to Sanatan Dharma, the eternal truth, we are divided into that which is impermanent, that which changes. So our material world changes. So all that we know as atoms, time, matter, space, that changes. So we will call that temporal, or that which is impermanent, that which is not true. So if we remove time, we remove space, we remove matter, then what remains, that is eternal, and that is what we call the eternal truth, or that which is permanent. In order for us to discover this which is the truth, the absolute reality, we then engage in transcending that which we are not. We are not the body, we are not the mind, we are not the intellect. We are therefore this transcendental state, or this eternal state, this eternal treatise, and that is Sanatan Dharma, and that is the philosophy, the ideology that we follow, and that is what Hinduism is. It is therefore a fallacy as Hindus when we identify our religion as Hinduism, or identify Hinduism as our religion, because it is not. It is not meant to be a religion. It is not meant to be just about our rituals and our routines. It is not simply meant to be a defining system of belief. It is not a dogma to say that we must follow these articles of faith. That is not Sanatan Dharma. The essence of Sanatan Dharma is actually the realization of that divine consciousness. Remember, I said it is that which exists when nothing else exists. Again, it sounds very contradictory. That which exists we know as time, space, and matter. Beyond time, space, and matter, that which exists is the eternal truth that we call Brahman. The word Brahman means everlasting, vastness, no beginning, no end. Sanatana Dharma, the eternal truth, says that when we remove our physical self, when we remove our mental self, and remove our intellectual self, that which exists at that point in time is Brahman. It is the Paramatma, the Supreme Self, which is what we know as existence, consciousness, and bliss. That is our nature. The purpose of Sanatana Dharma is to realize that nature within each one of us. We are Sat, Sit, Ananda. We are existence, consciousness, bliss. All we need to do is to realize what we are not and come to that understanding of what we are. And that is our ideology. That is the purpose of Sanatana Dharma and the quest in order to realize, to actualize what is our real self by removing the not self, the unreal self, the impermanent self. So therefore, only the permanent self, the absolute reality will then exist. So with this eternal treatise that we call Sanatana Dharma, how do we know what we should do? Is there any particular pathway for us to follow? Is there any one way that we must observe, that we must adhere to? And I'm happy to say the answer is no. You see, with Sanatana Dharma, it is understood that the very nature of man, our very idea, the way we think, our attitudes, our competencies all differ. And therefore there is no one set way for us to realize that absolute self. There is not one set way for us to come to that realization of the Supreme Self. So, what are some of the ways available? Well, as I said, it is not a religion, but it is called Dharma. It is called duty. It is called a way of life. So, what can we do? What is available to us? Well, if we search the pages of Bhagavad Gita, or we look at Upanishads, or we read about the life of Sri Ram in Ramayana, or we go to the very source of it all, which is the Vedas, we will see, we will understand that for any of us, we could choose the path of devotion, bhakti yoga. And through our devotion, through our worship, through our obeisance towards the divine, it can lead us to that point of self-realization. Also, we can choose a path of karma. Now, karma is a topic that most people love to hear about. I am not going to have a discourse on karma today, with the exception to say, let us give just a simplified version of karma, which is the karma meaning the action. If we choose good actions based upon good intentions, then we will realize the Supreme Self. And then there's Raji, which for many of us is that point of bringing the mind into singularity, where the mind enters into total equipoise and balance. And therefore we now transcend thought itself. Any of these methodologies or these practices or observances will bring forth that divine consciousness and help us or aid us or guide us into the realization of the Supreme Self, that realization of Brahman, that divine consciousness. And that, my dear friends, that is what we call Sanatana Dharma. I hope you are enjoying our background view of the beautiful city of Singapore. So another question came to me. I thought this is a question that really requires a good answer. The question that the viewer asked was simply, do Hindus worship stones, rocks, idols, and paintings? And if so, why would someone take a stone and worship this stone? Or take paint it on a canvas, and then call that canvas God? Does that make sense? And is that really God? Now, to answer that question, and I was asked that question once before, and I'll tell you what I told the person who asked me. I said, look at your desk. On top of your desk, I see there's a photo of your wife and your children. Would you take that photo of your wife and children, put it on the ground, and then stamp on it? So the guy looked at me in horror and he said, of course not. Why would I do that? That's my wife and children. So I said, no, it's not. It is simply a representation, a photo, an image of your wife and children, but not actually your wife and children. So he then sat back on his chair and he said, so you are saying that what you have displayed is not the actual God, but just a representation. And I responded in kind and I said, what you see as these images, these icons, not idols, these icons displayed in Hinduism of various aspects of the divine must not be seen or interpreted as being actual manifestations of God, because in Hinduism, God is everything and everything is that God. There's no concept of a personal God that sits somewhere in the heaven that is recording something about our life. It is a broader concept of a consciousness that pervades all things. It's in everything and everything is in it, but yet exists outside of existence, as we know. So what we do have, what we do see, are simply representations of aspects of this divine consciousness. And it then becomes like pictorial images, pictorial representations, that when we do puja, when we worship, when we do mantra, when we pray, what we do in effect is to bring that aspect of the divine into our mind in order for us to focus on, in order for us to concentrate on that particular divine manifestation or consciousness at that point in time. As you know, Hinduism, as displayed in the life of Sri Ram or in the Battle of Mahabharat, is filled with such symbolism, and that lends to all aspects of our bhakti, our worship. Many ancient civilizations, such as the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Egyptians, used symbolism as part of their worship, as part of their culture, and to manifest, to show, or to display, exhibit their ideologies. So it is not unique to just the Indian civilization. So displaying our images, our icons, is something that we found in so many ancient religious practices. Today, what we call Hinduism now, Sanatana Dharma, is just one of the mystery religions that still practices using these ancient art forms of imagery in worship. And is it practical? And the answer is absolutely yes. It is practical. If you look at all aspects of our lives, don't we use imagery? Don't we still have a national emblem, our coat of arms? Don't we still have countries around the world, their national flag, their national colors? And even how we stand at attention, is that not symbolic of our respect for our nation? We still use symbolism in so many aspects of our lives. So therefore, why not use symbolism in the way that we worship? Why not use symbolism in the way that we try to articulate what our belief systems are? So yes, we are not worshippers of stones or paintings, but they are just pictorial representation, creating images of a higher level of that consciousness. So one final question that was asked, which is, so some religions have a particular text that define what their religion is. Is there any particular text for the Hindus or for the Sanatanists? And the answer to that is yes and no. So there are major texts such as the four Vedas, the Upanishads, which explains the Vedas, the Mahabharata. Within the Mahabharata, we find the Bhagavad Gita, we have the Puranas, we have the Ramayana, and of course there are other texts as well. But the beauty of Sanatana Dharma is that it existed even before these texts existed. The Vedas itself, as written by the Rishis and the Munis, simply wrote what was already existing in that divine consciousness. So for Sanatana Dharma, the text does not and cannot define the great vastness of this philosophy, this way of life, this existence of pure consciousness. The text can guide us, yes, but even without the text, we are told to go within ourselves, go beyond what we know as the physical, the mental, and the subtlest self, which is thought. And there exists the final truth, the only truth, the eternal truth, the truth of Sat Chit Ananda, ourselves. With or without any particular text, that truth will still exist. As Hindus, we need not prove the historicity or the textual accuracy of anything. The main truth that exists is within ourselves. Go within, discover that real self, find that self, realize it, and that is the ultimate truth for any one of us. Thank you once again for joining me on this version of Journey of Enlightenment as I bring it to you from the lovely land of Singapore.